Hello, how you doing? Thanks for coming back. Let's talk about the weekend. I took this week's photo when my wife and I went for a long weekend to La Rioja. We visited villages up in the mountains. We didn't go to the vineyards or the winemakers. It was absolutely amazing. We chilled out so much. It was so relaxing. We came back home on the Sunday evening, so relaxed, so chilled out that we didn't really care that the next day was Monday and the start of the working week. But did you know that the weekend is a relatively modern invention? It wasn't until the mid-19th century in Britain, specifically Manchester, that some workers began to have Saturday afternoons off. They still work Saturday mornings. Of course, Sunday was a free day, but because you had to go to the church and you had to worship, you had to be a good person. It wasn't until the 20th century that having 2 days off, both Saturday and Sunday, became a normal thing. Henry Ford, for example, began to give his workers Saturday and Sunday because he thought that a rested worker was a more productive worker. Nowadays, all around the world, most countries have some kind of weekend, some kind of 2-day break and a 5-day work week. So, what are you going to do this weekend? I hope to go to the beach if the weather's good. I'm going to go to a basketball match on Sunday midday. I'd like to read a book that I really want to finish. I've got to do some shopping and cleaning. There's a film on at the cinema that I'd like to go to. And I want to get a few things done that I haven't been able to do during the week. But in general, what I really want to do is chill out. Okay, I'm going to get on with my things now so that I can have a weekend free of work. Have a great weekend. Bye.
Okay, here's something maybe you haven't thought much about. That 2-day weekend we all live by. We just take it completely for granted, don't we? It structures everything.
Yeah.
So today, our mission is to really dig into the sources and figure out how this whole thing was, well, invented.
It really was an invention, a modern one, too. Because, for most of history, people just worked. Almost every single day. I mean, during the Industrial Revolution, it got intense. 6-day weeks were common, often 12, maybe 14 hours a day. Brutal stuff.
And Sunday. That wasn't really a day off, was it?
Not for leisure, no. It was strictly for religious duties. Resting, maybe, but mostly church. Not, kicking back.
Right. So you had this conflict starting up, right?
Yeah.
Between different
A
groups?
real three-way pull.
Yeah, the trade unions pushing hard for shorter hours, obviously.
Uh-huh. Then the business owners, terrified that cutting hours would just tank their profits. Absolutely tank them.
And then the religious leaders worried about losing your grip on Sunday if it became, well, less about God.
Exactly. But what's really interesting is how the economics kind of eventually forced the issue. It wasn't just about workers being tired.
It was about how their tiredness was actually costing money.
Precisely. That became the key driver, especially in England.
Let's talk about that profit loss angle. Because the English situation had this specific problem, this worker behavior issue.
Yeah, St. Monday. It sounds quaint, but it was a serious problem.
So workers were so exhausted they'd drink heavily on Sunday.
Right. And then couldn't or wouldn't show up for work on Monday. Mass absenteeism.
They literally called it St. Monday. That's amazing.
It really was widespread. So factories needed a practical fix, and we see one emerge around the 1840s, particularly in places like Manchester and Salford. They started offering a Saturday half-holiday.
Just half a day.
Just half a day. But it wasn't out of kindness, really. It was a calculated move to try and stop St. Monday, cut down on that lost productivity.
And did it work? What was the impact?
Oh, huge. Immediately. People suddenly had this block of free time.
And they didn't just sleep.
No. They went out, parks became popular, music halls too, and crucially for later, sporting events. early football clubs, like Manchester United, Manchester City, they basically got their first regular crowds thanks to that Saturday half day.
So it showed that giving people a bit of rest actually made them happier, more efficient.
Both. Morale went up, and so did efficiency when they were working. It was sort of the first proof of concept.
Okay, so that idea then jumps across the pond to the U.S.
It does, yeah. Though initially it was sometimes for slightly different reasons. Like there's a case in 1908, a factory in New England closed on Saturdays for its Jewish workers for religious observance.
But the big shift, the one that made the two-day weekend standard, that was later.
Much later and much more deliberate. We're talking Henry Ford in 1926. That was the game changer.
Right. His move wasn't just about tired workers, was it? It was bigger picture.
Absolutely strategic. He introduced the 5-day work week, closed his factories completely on Saturday and Sunday. His thinking was twofold. Yes, rested workers are more productive. He believed that.
But the other part?
He realized workers needed free time to actually buy and use the stuff being mass-produced, like his cars. You need a weekend to go for a drive, right?
Yeah. Create your own market. That's clever.
Extremely. And the numbers just completely backed him up. It changed everything.
So what did the data show?
By the 1930s, the 2-day weekend was pretty common across the U.S. Ford himself saw output per worker jump by about 15%.
15%, while working less.
Exactly. And even bigger picture, overall U.S. manufacturing productivity soared something like 40% between 1920 and 1940, while average hours worked actually went down.
Wow. So rest literally paid off.
Massively. It proved rest wasn't just nice, it was profitable and efficient.
So bringing this forward, what's the legacy for us, for you listening today?
Well, fundamentally, the weekend created the entire modern leisure economy. Think about it. By the 1950s, spending on weekend leisure activities was already making up nearly a third of all consumer spending in the U.S. It fueled economic growth.
And it spread globally, right? Though maybe with variations.
Oh, yes. It's pretty much global now, although you see variations like the Friday-Saturday weekend in some Muslim-majority nations. But the core idea, established. And the consensus now is pretty clear. Having that regular break protects health, helps family life, boosts happiness.
Which brings us right up to today, doesn't
Yeah.
it? Because we're hearing all this talk about a 4-day work week.
Exactly. These experiments happening globally.
And the arguments sound familiar.
Yeah.
Business owners worrying about productivity drops.
Versus the potential gains in well-being, maybe even efficiency again, societal benefits.
It's the same debate they were having back in the 19th century over that first Saturday half day.
It really is. History repeating, or at least rhyming. And maybe that's the final thought here. The whole history of the weekend kind of teaches us something important. That progress isn't always just about working more or harder. Sometimes, maybe often, it's about understanding when to stop, when to rest, and actually enjoy the life all that work is supposed to support.
Chat about these questions and write down your opinions and ideas. 1. How do you usually spend your weekends? Are 2 days enough to do everything you want to do? 2. How would your work and private life change if you had a 4-day work week? 3. How do weekends help people's health, family, or social life? Do weekends create any problems? 4. Can you think of any jobs where a weekend is impossible? How do people manage?